Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the Inspired Disorder Podcast. My name is Ray Taylor. This episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been watching. Watched a few movies. Before the last episode I recorded, I went in to watch Deadpool 2. Right after that, recorded in my van in the parking lot. And really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. But anyway, so sorry. So I watched Deadpool 2. I'm also going to talk about another movie called Rider, which is an independent movie about a Bronco rider anyway. And then I'm also going to talk about Solo. Went and saw Solo. So those are the three movies I'm going to be talking about, maybe a little bit more at the end. But that's primarily this episode. If you want to help support the podcast, go over to patreon.com/inspired disorder, patreon.com/inspired disorder. It's a place where you can get making of videos of the artwork that I do and the photoshops that I do. It's a place where you can get the video version of this show immediately, basically. Normally the audio is released every Tuesday. But when I record these and process the video, I put it up on Patreon immediately. And you also get first access to the artwork that I do. So if you want to buy any of my artwork, you can buy it before it goes public. And as a Patreon supporter of me on Patreon, you get a special discount code, which will apply to any of the artwork that I sell, as well as shirts and basically everything over at inspireddisorder.com, which is my website. So go over to patreon.com/inspireddisorder. Donate. It's only $1 a month for the first 100 donors, and then after that, it goes up to $3 a month. Both, I think, are very good value for what you get if you're into watching, making of, watch like painting live and all that kind of stuff. And see how things come together, all of that. Or if you just want to watch me talk, you're a fan of watching podcasts, and you want to watch the video version of this, you get that over at Patreon also. So anyway, what I've been watching, and just for a little recap for anybody that might be new to the show, it has changed over the years. This is episode 382 of the Inspired Disorder Podcast, which comes out every Tuesday on iTunes. Hopefully, I'll be going twice a week, but at least that Tuesday episode and maybe a bonus episode here and there, which I might do a bonus episode for the UFC fights that are happening on Sunday night, which audio of this is coming out after that. That's why I'm not talking about it. But anyway, this show, I talk about the things that I'm interested in, which a lot of that is I love movies, so I go watch movies all the time. Documentaries. Every once in a while, I'll get hooked on a TV show, podcast. So segment what I've been watching is just anything that I want to share with you that I've been watching, either to help you avoid watching, like the movie I talked about in the last episode, Life of the Party. Do not watch that. But then there might be movies that I recommend watching, like Deadpool 2, which I'll talk a little bit more about, as well as the other movies. I'm also a huge fan of the UFC. That used to be a big part of this show, breaking down cards, making picks. I still watch all of the cards from top to bottom. I don't pay as much of attention. I'm watching it more as a fan rather than somebody that's going to try and break it down and do a good job on a podcast. But I still will be talking about fights, the upcoming fights in not London, but Manchester. I think Manchester. Fuck. Darren Till versus Superboy cowboy. No, super. No, fuck. What's his name? The karate hottie guy. Wonder Boy Thompson. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Man, that was a mashup of his whole name. That fight's coming up tomorrow. I'm recording this on a Saturday. So look forward to potentially a bonus episode coming out. There's also, I do question and answer. Listeners, if you want to submit questions for me to answer, if you have any questions for me, it could be funny or unfunny, serious, whatever. You can ask me anything. That is a segment of the show. I'll try and give updates to my life of things that are going on in my life and going on with Inspired Disorder. So all those kinds of updates, of course, will be part of the Inspired Disorder podcast. And then, I might just get into stories of something I just feel like, or just specific topics of things I might want to talk about. So that's kind of the breakdown of the new Inspired Disorder podcast. As far as guests and things like that, in the future, you never know. There's definitely times where I would like to talk to people in a podcast forum. But as of right now, I don't have the desire to set up everything to do that. But in the future, you never know. For now, it's a solo podcast, so deal with that, people. And you can go check out all my work at inspireddisorder.com. But let's get into this episode with Deadpool 2, sequel to the movie most of you know as Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds, really funny. I enjoyed the first Deadpool a lot. I did not enjoy the X-Men editions that were part of the first movie. But everything, like just the humor of the movie and how it talks shit about comic books and pop culture and kind of breaks down the fourth wall in a lot of ways. I think they did, for that kind of a movie, to like high concept movie, to have a sequel that's not disappointing, I think is very difficult. But I think Deadpool 2 pulls it off. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the first one more, but there's moments in the second one that I think are better than moments in the first. I don't know. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I went and saw it at it wasn't a super packed theater. The theater I go to, it's kind of out of the way, so it's usually pretty empty. Even I went and saw Solo on yesterday on a Friday, and there was maybe 10 people in the theater. So Deadpool, I enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed the X Force that he puts together and the instant comedy that ensues. I heard negative about how they handled his girlfriend, which I didn't really give a shit about in the first one. They're, I don't know. It just, like, the fact that she's used as an emotional, kind of an emotional pivot point of this movie is fine with me. I don't give a shit. Like, okay, it's female character gets cut out and you don't get anything from her, but I enjoyed the movie. It gave it that emotional kind of weight to it that I felt. I felt some emotion. Like I should have like a scale with movies that get me emotional. And there were some emotional parts in this, and it has its great action moments. The kid that's in it from Hunt for the Wilder People, I thought was good. Kind of the back and forth of him kind of being super, really clingy and, clearly doesn't have a lot of friends. And as soon as anybody shows him any kind of attention, he's like, oh, now we're best friends. Now we're like brothers. Now we're like, which I remember a lot of kids like that. A lot of people that are like that have the opposite effect on me. Like the more clingy and like amped somebody is to like hang out, the less I want to be around them. It's like, don't be so excited to be around me. That's ridiculous. But yeah, Deadpool 2, I enjoyed it. Clearly go see it. I think, the big worry is I wasn't super, amped up looking forward to it, but it ended up being so my expectations were actually pretty low going into it. And I ended up being pleasantly surprised. I really wouldn't mind. I want to go watch it again. As far as all three of these movies, I would definitely go watch Deadpool 2 again first. It was fun to watch in a theater. Packed theater would probably be good. Um, but yeah, it's a really good one. I enjoyed it. Ryan Reynolds. And like even the end where he goes through and sorry, I'm having like sinus problems. It's been super windy here and my allergies and all that kind of stuff. So I forgive me if I make weird, disgusting noises into the microphone. I'll try not to do that. It just feels like I've got snot just kind of just in between. Like I can breathe, but I don't know. I'm falling apart, people, on this podcast. So the other movie, so go watch Deadpool 2. I mean, the characters from the first one, Gina Carano didn't come back, and the dude with wings wasn't in this one. I don't know if he was in the last one, but Gina Carano wasn't in this one. But it did have the CGI metal guy and then the broody chick, who looks, anyway. It's old. It's kind of weird to see kids grow up. Like they're not even like the main. It's like the one thing for Harry Potter to watch him get older throughout the movies. But just like some side character in Deadpool to get older from one movie to the next is kind of a weird thing. But Deadpool 2, was I in a point there? It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. Go watch it. It's just a fun movie. There's nothing that like to really complain about. Oh yeah, those people were in it. The X-Men people were in it. But it was fine. Like I didn't really give a shit. Like the metal guy was actually more of a part of this plot emotionally, I guess, than the first one. So it ended up being okay. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. And I liked, despite like the end, kind of them get the ultimate redo button. Spoilers, kind of, if vague things or spoilers. But still, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I'd go see it again. As far as like comic book movies that fall apart at the end, which a lot of them do, that one I enjoyed. So the next movie I went and saw at a different movie theater. This movie theater's at the mall, like the only mall in the desert, and they play a lot of independent movies, and foreign films, documentaries, stuff like that. One of very few theaters in the valley that do, and Rider is a movie that was reviewed on one of my favorite podcasts, the /FilmCast, and I had never heard of it. This director, I want to say she's Japanese. She's Asian. I want to say she's Japanese, but I'm not 100%. I don't feel like looking it up. But it's one of those kind of directors that does, that's not from the U.S., but wants to tell a U.S. story. Like the guy that did Dancer in the Dark and Dogma, or fuck, what was that movie? I don't know. There's a director, and I can't even think of his name right now. Lars von Trier, maybe. He's like Polish or Danish, and he did like super like art house kind of director, and did a series of movies that kind of were the American experience through the lens of somebody that's never been to the U.S. And so this director, I guess from what it sounded like, was similar, and she's doing this movie's about a kid who is a rodeo rider, and was injured in a rodeo, had his head, cracked open, and was in a coma, and may never be able to. Is recommended not to ever ride again, because of seizures and things like that he's having, and just the brain damage that he's already had. So it's very much a quote unquote, as some people might call it, a white bummer movie. It is a bummer movie. Um, and it's but it's told, like, I guess all the people involved, maybe not all of them, but most of the actors are actually the people, and this is like an actual kid that got his, and you get to see his actual scar. Because I guess she started filming this just after he got in the accident, and in the movie that you get to see actual footage of him, and then another character that's in a way worse position from being a rodeo rider. You get to see the actual YouTube footage of them in rodeos. So it's kind of a weird, it's a fictional narrative, but using people that it's really happened to, like real life. So it's kind of a weird blend of like documentary but scripted reality movies. Like it's kind of a weird blend of how you would kind of tell a story and cast a movie. Uh, Done really well. I mean, it's a very, it takes its time. I didn't really think it was very. I thought it was good. The pacing was good. It's just one of those movies that's quiet. It's not a high paced movie. He's in like a small town in fucking. I don't even remember. I don't even remember what state it was. It doesn't really, like, some small town where there's still rodeos. I mean, like East County, San Diego, they still have rodeos. There's rodeos up in uh Yucca Valley and stuff like that. And so there's like a lot of places in California that this could be, or Texas, I'm sure. But so it's kind of him struggling with what he's going to do with his life. It almost reminds me of something that a lot of professional MMA fighters probably go through, where they take damage and then they get to a part of their career where they can't fight anymore, or they shouldn't fight anymore. But then they don't have anything going on outside of fighting. So when that transition comes to where their career is going to end, which it does for every fighter, at an early age, usually, I mean, I guess not that early of an age, but your 30s is kind of, your late 30s is when a lot of people start to break down. So it's a lot longer than other sports, but uh, it definitely reminded me of, it could easily be a independent movie about an MMA fighter who is struggling with potentially giving up the thing that he's done. Although this kid is a lot younger. It seems like he's, early 20s. So way younger career for this person than an MMA fighter. So it's dealing with what he's gonna potentially do if he does quit, and he's not sure if he's gonna quit. He lives with his dad. His mom passed away, so he lives with his dad, who's an alcoholic but means well. I mean, his dad kind of has like a weird emotional kind of turn. Like, I didn't like him up until kind of towards the end of the movie, where you kind of you see that he gives a shit. And he has a sister who's mentally disabled. I don't know what the proper term is. And she doesn't want him to ride anymore. His dad doesn't want him to ride anymore. And he visits with a friend of his who, like, there's these moments where he's going out, and he hangs out with his buddies, and they're like, they have a fire going just out in the middle of the prairie or whatever, and they're drinking, hopping over the fire and telling their stories, and they're all telling stories about one of their friends, and, like, just kind of this guy that was the best, rodeo rider guy, and fucking got all the chicks and like was this, superhero in their group of people that ride rodeos and like they're Michael Jordan kind of guy. Um, and then cut to the main character in the rehab facility where this guy they're talking about is just completely, he's like a quadriplegic and just can't, like, or he's got fuck, I don't know what it's like, Parkinson's or something like that. He's not doing well. He's never like, he can't do anything. He drools. He's like there but not there. I mean, he's there and he's like playing a real guy, a real rodeo, and you get to see him. And he was like, a young. He looked kind of like a fuck. What's the actor's name that's in he's just like a attractive, well built, kind of early 20s kind of bro dude, um, and he had an accident riding a horse or whatever, and then he's just completely different. And I don't know if it's like, so it gives you that contrast of like what could have really gone bad for this guy, where this guy's still like put together. He has like his arm locks up, which that shit happens to me, which is kind of fucking. The movie kind of made me a little a little scared. It's like there's a lot of moments where the guy that has the scar, the main character, his hand would lock up on things and he'd have to like pry it loose. And there's been a few times where my hand locks up. Not exactly like that, but it definitely locks up, and then I kind of usually like subsides after a little bit. I don't pry it open necessarily. I think mine's more cramps than seizures. Hopefully, it's been a long time. But then in the course of this movie, he kind of, because he's worked with horses, he understands horses really well. He kind of gets into breaking horses and training horses. So that's kind of almost the evolution of what he might do now that he can't, ride anymore. And because he's an actual, like, this is a real person that does this for a living in reality, but he's playing a character that is doing it in a movie. You actually see him like actually break a few horses and take horses that are skittish and dangerous. And then, he even there's a moment in this movie where it's like he gets this horse and he breaks it. There's a scene where he breaks it and they have this bond, and then he has this horse, and now it's like, it's almost like this horse is a therapy animal for him in a lot of ways. It's something that, aside from his friends and his family that all have their own opinions on what he should do, it's like this horse that just gives a shit about him, and then they can just go ride and not think about anything and get away from everything. And there's this so there's a scene in this movie. There's something that happens that's kind of it's almost like in the Never-Ending Story, where Artex gets caught in the swamps of despair. I think it's called the quicksand. I forget what but and there's this emotional scene where he loses his horse. There's a different kind of version. It's not as whimsical and fanciful as that kind of a scene, but he loses this horse, and the scene and how it happens, I definitely recommend you. But it's like, it's just like all I could think about was my dog, right? Because my dog Izzy, which she's, I don't know where she is. You might see her in the backgrounds. One of the advantages of the video version, you might see Izzy now and then. But all I could think of, like his bond with this horse was in a lot of ways like my bond with Izzy. Like, she's gone through, she's moved. She lived with me in San Diego. She's moved with me to Denver, lived out in Denver in the snow and all that shit for 2 years. And then now she's back living in the desert in the shitty heat. Like, she's put up with everything, been my best buddy, and kind of, I don't know how I would have done all of these things without kind of that, just kind of that thing that's just like a positive energy in your life that just doesn't come with any baggage. Um, so it's a heart-wrenching scene in this fucking movie. And totally bummed me out. Totally bummed me out. Uh, and It's a great movie. I mean, the whole thing. It's the end of the movie where you kind of see by the end he makes his decision on what he's going to do. And it's a beautiful movie. It's definitely a beautiful movie. I would recommend watching it. It's emotional, but it's so well done, even considering that it's like actual people. The dad, probably the worst acting out of all of them, but still solid movie. Writer, I don't know where it's gonna go. It's still in theaters. So if it's in your area, if you live in like a city that has, any theaters that play independent movies, I'm sure it's there. If you're looking to go watch a really good movie that not many people are going to watch, and it's a good story, especially if it's like, if you think you might be into like that kind of story of, I also heard it compared to like The Wrestler, the Darren Aronofsky movie, where that's like kind of a guy at the end of his a career as a amateur wrestler, and can no longer do it, and doesn't really necessarily know what he could do outside of it. A little bit different because the kid's younger, but it's a great movie. I recommend it. And it's all great. I enjoyed it. The writer, even though it was a bummer, it's a bummer movie. But sometimes you're in the mood for a bummer movie, or just a good, like just a solid drama. Just a solid drama sometimes is good, especially like with all these, you know, every fucking movie is a remake or a sequel or a spin-off or a superhero movie or a franchise or a universe. It's like there's so few just original stories, just these original gems. Like Ryder, I would say is akin to the Florida Project in a lot of ways. Two like just independent movies, just these little nice fucking stories with their amazing acting and kind of just just good movies, just solid movies. But yeah, a nice little palate cleanser in a lot of ways. To follow up and in a way to kind of make myself happy again, and because it's the next big movie that came out, and I like to keep up on all the movies that are coming out. But Solo, the Han Solo spin-off prequel movie came out. A movie that was originally directed by the duo that directed the Lego movie, as well as 22 Jump Street, maybe 21 Jump Street as well. I don't know. Either way, both great movies. I love the Lego movie. I loved both 21 and 22 Jump Street. Disney didn't like what they were doing, so they kicked them off and got Ron Howard. When that happened, I thought Ron Howard, basically the movie had been shot, and Ron Howard was there to just kind of piece the movie together. Apparently what happened, Ron Howard reshot 70% of the movie. So it is very much a Ron Howard movie. I didn't know that till after I watched the movie. Because at the end, when you see directed by Ron Howard, I thought it had already been done. But he apparently reshot 70% of this movie. So it is a Ron Howard movie, which makes a lot of sense to me, because Ron Howard hasn't done a good movie in a very, very long time. I don't have anything against Ron Howard. He seems like a sweet man. He is basically he's an okay director. He doesn't have like a specific, he's not a Scorsese, he's not a fucking Tarantino, he's not a Spielberg, he's not a Zemeckis. He doesn't have he doesn't do like really, he doesn't put his stamp necessarily on, he just does solid movies. He just pretty average, some above average. Apollo 13, amazing movie. I love that movie. Beautiful Mind, which I think he did. Love that movie. He's done some good movies. It's been a long time since he's done a good movie. So the fact that some people hate Solo, I enjoyed it. I think the fact I did listen to a very in-depth breakdown on the Slash Filmcast, because my initial thoughts coming out of the movie was I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It wasn't, but it felt like with Star Wars movies, it seems like there's two tiers. You got the spin-off movies like Rogue One and Solo, and then you have the official kind of timeline. And the official ones seem to be done on a much higher level. Like The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, fucking blows this movie out of the water. Destroys the fuck out of Solo. But in comparison to like Rogue One, I think I enjoyed this movie more than Rogue One, I think. Barely. I think this was just a little bit more fun. Although Rogue One introduced, I did enjoy a lot of the new characters that it introduced that ended up dying. Spoilers. But I think Rogue One did a better job at being a prequel or a spin-off because it made the first Star Wars movie better. Like, because they show how they get the plans that the basic plot of the first movie was just like, oh, here's the weakness. Like, Rogue One, kind of legitimizes that movie and just makes it more exciting in a lot of ways. This movie, because apparently it takes place somewhere halfway between the third Star Wars movies and the fourth Star Wars movie, that it doesn't really lead in directly, but apparently at one point, and potentially still, Solo was meant to be a trilogy story, so there may be more Solo movies, which I would be fine with. I hope that there's a new writer. I hope that there's a new director. I wish I would have seen the original I really wish I would have seen the original version of this movie. The original 70% of this movie that was directed by the other people that Disney didn't like, because I have a feeling it would have taken chances, and because of that, I think it would have been a lot better. Hopefully, I mean, it could have been worse even, but I think I would imagine it would have a lot more flavor to it. But I enjoyed the fuck out of this movie. I liked the casting of the young Solo. I didn't mind how he got his name. I mean, that scene, it doesn't have to be like some epic way somebody gets their name. People just get their names the way they get their names. But there are definitely, after listening to the Slash Filmcast, which if you're looking for like an in-depth breakdown of that movie, which I agreed with a lot of the shit that they said, and it definitely opened my eyes to a lot of references that I didn't necessarily pick up on, but how many the movie had and how like overbearing the movie was with like references. I didn't pick up on a lot of them, so it didn't feel like that when I was watching the movie, and I don't really give a shit overall. I'm not like a huge Star Wars nerd. Like, I love the movies growing up. I'm not a big fan of the prequels. The third of the prequels, I've tried to watch multiple times and fallen asleep, and I haven't watched it all. But I love all of the new stuff that Disney. I loved fucking The Last Jedi. Even Force Awakens was great, even though it was basically a retelling in a lot of ways. I'm very excited with what Rian Johnson's going to do with his trilogy that he's going to do. After JJ, I think, is doing the next Star Wars movie in the main timeline. But as like a side thing, I enjoyed it. I liked the casting. I liked Donald Glover as fucking the other dude, Lando. It felt like a fun movie that had a lot of like references, and you got to like Chewie is the best part of this movie. The moments with Chewie are the best part of this movie. Fucking also Woody, I liked Woody Harrelson in this movie. there's definitely some good moments in this movie. There's also some moments that were like a little bit just felt out of place, I guess. But even still, like the relationship with Lando and his droid were kind of weird, especially after kind of the little rebellion that went on with the droids at the time being highly enslaved and have like these governor little bolts on them, and so it's almost like the monkeys getting free of the monkey cages. And so it was kind of, I don't know. I enjoyed the movie. I actually enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I would not mind going to see this movie again in theaters. I don't think it's nothing as epic as The Last Jedi at all. Like, but if you're just looking for a fun action movie, and I don't. It's so weird how like there's a sentiment on the /FilmCast where nobody was excited or gave a shit about the origin story of a Han Solo, whereas I related a shitload to Han Solo because it's just like he's kind of on his own and he's trying to just survive and make things work, and like I don't know. I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I enjoyed how he met Chewie. It was just like so much fun. It was just a lot of fun. And because I don't really care about all the baggage that comes along with the fact that it's a giant franchise. I don't like that. I just don't care about a lot of stuff. It like all the things that like people have problems with has a lot to do with that. I feel like, as well as the fact that Ron Howard was put in charge of this movie. Because I think for sure just way fresher style the people originally attached to Ron Howard. You want to talk about styles? Like if Ron Howard did the Lego movie, there would never have been a Lego Batman movie because it just would have been mediocre and like whatever and just wouldn't have caught on. Same thing with 22. Ron Howard doing 22 Jump Street. He's not like known for being funny. And this movie maybe had a lot of humor in it, which would have been awesome, especially for the characters and the actors and the ages that these characters are. There could have been a lot. I would imagine there would have been a lot more jokey jokes, a lot more lighthearted. And I'm fucking fine with that. I like them putting some comedy into this fucking thing. I would rather them inject some comedy into it than inject like parliament scenes where people are arguing politics or some shit like the prequels had. Like it's stuff I don't give that's how I fall asleep. You want to put me to sleep? Show me boring. Show me a bunch of people just standing around listening to a person talk. It's like get out of here, man. Yeah, so Solo, I liked it, man. I enjoyed it. If I've heard multiple things. I've heard people that didn't like The Last Jedi hated this and are done with the franchise because of Disney or whatever. And it's just like, and I think that person's just like in the culture of just hating things as just, being let it all burn kind of a mentality. Trump supporter, I'm sure. No, I don't know. But versus like I enjoyed Last Jedi and I enjoyed this one. And I've heard people that, I've heard also people that did like The Last Jedi that didn't like this one. It's a mixed bag. I don't think, or hated The Last Jedi but did like this one. So I thought it was good. Was it great? Was it epic? No. But was it fun? Was it a fun time at the movies? Yes. I didn't hate walking. It wasn't like walking out of Justice League or Suicide Squad where it's like the whole story of this, like I have to understand the references to get what's going on. Like no, it was a well told like story about like a Western in space. They do like a train heist and like, it's kind of got those heist elements. I liked it. It was a lot of fun. So go watch it. I'm sure people who are listening to this would probably be going to watch it. You're not going to go wrong. The best 3 out of these 3 movies, like quality cinema, is Rider. Deadpool is more fun than Solo. But if you just aren't into superhero shit, then for sure Solo might help you out, and vice versa. If you're just not into Star Wars, you don't give a shit, but you want to watch like a rated R comedy, a superhero action movie, like there's a lot of things to get from Deadpool too. But I enjoyed. I felt it was, especially after watching Life of the Party, which is just a dog shit movie. It felt like a waste of my life. Like same thing with the DC movies that have been coming out. Like when I'm done watching them, Justice League not as horrible, Wonder Woman probably the best out of everything that's come out, but like a really bad movie, I'll come out of the theater and just like regret the fact that I wasted my life, 2 hours of my life watching worthless shit. All of these movies are a lot of fun. And I enjoyed them. I enjoyed all of them. But yeah, so that's it. That's it for this episode of Inspired Disorder Podcast, what I've been watching. Make sure if you want to watch the video version of this show, go over to patreon.com/Inspired Disorder. That is the only place to watch this show. You sign up for $1. First 100 people can sign up for $1. Then the price of admission goes up to $3 over at Patreon. But in addition to watching these podcasts, in addition to that, you also get access to making of videos of the many faces. There's probably like 60 videos now that you can go watch of me painting the many faces. Also, there's a few making of videos for the Photoshops that I do. So you can go watch all of those making of videos. You also get first access to the new artwork that I have available before it gets released to the public. So if you are a fan of my work and you want first dibs, you can get those over on Patreon. And in addition to getting first dibs, you get a massive discount code that you can use to not only buy the many faces over at inspireddisorder.com, but you also get to buy t-shirts and prints and everything else that I sell there with that discount code that you get when you're a member over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder. Again, patreon.com/inspireddisorder. Help support me and get some extra cool stuff. Also, upcoming episode, I'm sure I will be doing an AMA segment, Ask Me Anything. So if you're curious about something, you want my opinion on whatever, I do not care about the question. Make it as vicious as you want. I will answer it on the podcast, most likely next episode. I'm probably going to do a little recap of the fight talk, so that may be a bonus episode, which you'll be able to see early over at Patreon. But yeah, I might be doing a question segment next one. So send those questions in over to my Twitter. If you use Twitter, @RayTaylor. If you use Instagram, @RayTaylor on Instagram as well. That's where you can see the many faces. I release a new face every day. That's also where I post the Photoshops that I do, or eventually I'll get back into photography and be doing that stuff too. And inspireddisorder.com for everything, but @RayTaylor on Instagram and Twitter for asking the questions, or to follow me there and seeing what I'm doing. Thank you all for listening to the show. Tell your friends and subscribe, rate, review, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. My name is Ray Taylor. This has been great. I enjoy all of you. Have a great week. Peace out!
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inspired Disorder Podcast. Embedded signals within this podcast have reprogrammed your natural thinking patterns. Side effects may include lack of inhibitions, erectile dysfunction, anal leakage, transcendental communication with beings from 4 of the 7 primary dimensions. In the event of a tear in space-time, please keep your hands down and feet together. Any loss of life or limbs due to interdimensional travel is not the responsibility of this podcast.